Hello friends, this is Isaiah and you are here. Wanted to make, on tonight's video, as you can see, wanted to introduce myself a little bit. I was talking to a good friend this weekend. We were talking about this video channel that I've kind of put together to reach out, maybe help people, offer some really good advice, some self-development information, what have you, and just some things that I've learned over the years that's kind of helped me. While discussing content, he was telling me that I needed to kind of open up a little bit and give you a little bit of my backstory. There's a lot of things in my life that are really hard to talk about. I'm not a very open person on social media, but going into this is all new to me. The idea of a YouTube channel, talking about certain things openly, some of the stuff that I talk about, it's really hard. It's really challenging for me. I've always been kind of an introverted and kind of a socially backward person, unless I'm in a very specific type of setting around people that I'm comfortable with. So I decided to make a video where I'm going to give you just a little bit of my backstory. I like this, I enjoy this, I enjoy a challenge, because when we challenge ourselves, we're pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone. When we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone, we grow, and we change, and we learn new things. I haven't always done things that way. I haven't always challenged myself to the degree that I push myself out of my comfort zone with a lot of my fears. I've always been an adventurous person. I'm not afraid to try new things as far as experience is concerned, but when it comes to trying new things that scare me or make me feel uncomfortable about my identity or who I am, or expressing myself openly, I get really turned inside out. So, in a lot of ways, the fruition of this whole channel is an act of rebellion against my fears. You see, I have a fear of rejection and of mockery. Over the last several years, since I've started on this path that I'm on my journey, I have learned to overcome many of those feelings of unworthiness or not being good enough. I learned to stop caring about living my life based on other people's perceptions or what they think of me. I haven't always been that way though, and this is what I'm going to get into, a little bit about me. I've grown up in a small town in eastern Kentucky where it's a very conservative state. Everyone here, it's not a progressive area like it is in most parts of the world nowadays. A lot of the things that I believe in and a lot of the things that drive me and that I want to do in life are things that still seem kind of backward. In this state. I'm still living here, still live in my hometown. So there's not a lot of people here, except for a very small group, that are doing the things that I do or believe the way I believe. As a matter of fact, I believe my YouTube channel in the area that I live in will be the first of its kind. I don't think there's anyone that discusses the subject matter of philosophy and spirituality and self-growth, looking within, quite the same way. I don't know, it could be wrong. I haven't met anyone yet that's doing this. But enough of my rambling, enough of my subconscious deflections of not wanting to talk about what I told you all I was going to talk about in this video, and that's my past. As a small child, I always struggled in school. I always had a hard time. I was bullied and picked on. I was beat up a lot in elementary school. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old. That had a major impact on my self-esteem. When I was a child, I had slight abandonment issues, but my mom attempted to compensate for my parents' divorce by saturating me and my sister with a lot of love and a lot of she bought us a lot of things and she gave us a lot, to the point that she wore her body down. She worked as a nurse for over 20 years and just worked midnight shifts and grinded away in order to give me and my sister everything that we wanted. I think my mom always felt like she was trying to compensate for my dad not being around. Now, don't get me wrong, my father's a good man. He loves me and my sister. He always took care of me and my sister financially growing up, always made sure we had everything that we had, but he wasn't in the picture very much. There wasn't a lot of the, I don't know, typical father-son time that some people are privileged to have growing up. So that caused a lot of problems for me. I never was introduced to sports or anything like that. I've always been an artistic person, painter, and that's always kind of creative. People with creative minds typically perceive the world differently, and therefore they behave differently in the world and they interact with people differently. And that was some of the things that kind of made me a touch socially awkward and backward, was my interest, my creative interest. So I had a really hard time growing up as a kid. Faced a lot of adversity, was beat on. The school systems always told me that I had a problem because I couldn't focus in school. I don't know if my lack of focus was because of anything in my home environment or anything that I'd gone to in the years prior, but I was always in special education classes, and just teachers throughout my elementary school years, they play-sated me and they never really challenged me. I was just kind of passed through school, and they would do their best to teach me, but if they couldn't get it through, they just kind of pushed me on. Therefore, I was never really developed in the way that I should. This was in the 1980s, and things were drastically different back then with the school systems than what they are now. And I kind of fell through the cracks, so to speak. So that was a hindrance to me growing up. I was always a bit of a daredevil. Always going back to that adventurous spirit I was talking about earlier. I pushed the envelope, was always ramping my bike off stuff and just getting in all kinds of mischief. Then when I got into my high school years, I started dabbling a little bit in alcohol, started drinking some, and started smoking pot, and I got a little crazy there. I started to socially evolve a little bit, so to speak, and I developed a circle of friends and took an interest in girls. One girl in particular. I had a high school sweetheart, fell in love with her, and she broke my heart. Thought I was absolutely going to die. This made me very suicidal teenager there for a brief period. Overall, I wasn't a suicidal teenager, maybe a little obsessive compulsive, but not suicidal. We ended up getting back together, a few more years passing. My senior year of high school, 18 years old, I run away from home with her. We hide out at a friend's house overnight, go to the courthouse the next day, and we got married. Our families were shocked and freaked out, as I'm sure you can imagine. My mother was worried to death, trying to find us all night long. They had the police looking for us. It was a crazy mess. It was not the highlight of my life. However, we got married a year later. I had my first child, my son. So that was the only good thing that came from that situation. That was the only benefit to that situation, I guess you could say, because here I was, this young kid who didn't know how to take care of himself, didn't know much about life, and was struggling to take care of a small family. It's just a terrible decision. Early on in my adult life, I had just set myself up for failure. Just the king of terrible decisions. That's been my thing, been a running theme throughout the course of my whole existence, until about the last 10 years or so. Long story short, a couple years pass, we get a divorce. She ended up being very physically and mentally abusive, and we argued at times in front of my son, and we just were not healthy for one another. And I just decided one day, you know what, I can't live in this situation anymore, and we got a divorce. I walked away. I had to do something good for myself. Wasn't too long after that, I started seeing a girl that I was working with and fell into another bad relationship. We both had and shared a lot of the similar self-destructive tendencies that I had at that stage in my life. We were very toxic for one another, ended up having 2 more children. I had a set of twins with her, and created even more adversity for myself, and was just continuing to make really tough and bad life choices, life decisions, just creating a deeper and deeper hole for myself. I invested more time in my self-destruction than I did building myself up and educating myself and developing myself as a man. A little more time passes. We end up getting a divorce because she was seeing my best friend behind my back while I was away at work, and that was a nasty blow in my life. My heart, here I am, 25 years old, 24, 25? Shoot, I can't remember, the years have just passed on by. My heart's been broken 2 times. I have 3 children now at this point. I haven't invested a lot of time in taking care of myself yet. I don't have much of an education to speak of at this point in my life, and I am just in a mess. I'm heartbroken, I'm sick, I'm drinking myself to death every day, and I'm just not making healthy life choices. Well, one day I wake up, and it was just like something snapped. I knew that I could either die or I could start taking care of myself. It was death or it was creating something new. So I went back to school, ended up becoming an EMT and a firefighter, and I gained some experience working for a local steel mill. Did a lot of exciting things and started to really just educate myself. Throughout the years, I've worked a lot of jobs and gained a lot of work experience, both in manual labor and even wore tie and sales and just a lot of customer service stuff. Then it was, and this, bear in mind, is a very condensed story of my life. Then it was around 2012. I'd gotten out of emergency services industry and was still doing good, still making positive choices. I found myself unhappy with where I was at in life. I was working about 100 hours a week at the steel mill, didn't have a lot of time for my kids. I was divorced, didn't have a lot of time for myself. In my spare time, I wasn't doing much but sleeping a few hours. Didn't have a lot of spare time in those days. And I was just in a hole, and I got visited by a friend one day who turned me on to some information that absolutely changed my life. He turned me on to the Spirit Science channel, and he turned me on to a new way of thinking. I grew up in a Christian home, a very conservative Christian environment. My younger years of life in school, I was a deacon in a local church and did some things there, but I won't go into that. As a very brief period of my life. Taught me a lot of things. had a lot of negative experiences surrounding that. And I don't want to bring that up because just because I had some negative experiences personally in the realm of Christianity and that specific type of conservative religion doesn't make it bad just because it wasn't for me. So he turned me on to this new information, and it was like 1,000 light bulbs at once went off in my brain. And I started to, I dug and dug and dug. I got into personal development, and I got into metaphysics, which got me into studying quantum mechanics and physics. I wanted to know how life worked. I wanted to know how everything worked and came together, how I came to be, why I was here. I got into philosophy. And then a friend of mine I worked with, because I used to be angry all the time, she turned me on to Buddhism. I'd never studied Buddhism before, didn't even know what it was. But I learned about meditation, so I started meditating. And over the course, this was 2011, 2012, over the course of a couple years, I'd really dug into all of this. My mind started to change, and I'd started to create new neural pathways. And I found myself perceiving my reality in a very different way, and I noticed things were starting to happen to me and for me in a very different way that had never happened before. And I learned that this started to happen because I took charge of my life, and I started to change my reality simply just by changing my thoughts and my beliefs and my habits. So I dug deeper and deeper, and there's a gap, some things I'm not going to go into right now, but I got deeper into this metaphysical reality and the study of all world religions, not all of them, but some of the major ones like Buddhism and different things, some pagan philosophies. And I've never been the type of person to, ever since Christianity, to be able to just settle on one philosophy or one set of rules or ideologies. Ever since I had this spiritual awakening, that's just what I'm going to call it. A lot of people have talked about spiritual awakenings and do talk about spiritual awakenings. Well, for me, this was a spiritual revolution. Because the more I dug in, the more I started to learn these things, I started to understand how most all of the major world religions were all talking about this stuff, but in just very different ways. You see, I'll give you an example. When we're praying, we're sending, I talked about in my last video, intentions in the mind and frequency. Well, we're just sending a frequency out into the universe, and whatever we're praying about or for, we sync up with that vibration, and that gets returned to us. Like attracts like. I'm getting a little bit off topic here. And I'm going to stop myself there. Save that subject matter for another video. My next video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about beliefs and belief systems, so I'm going to save that for them. Back on the subject of myself, I had a squirrel moment. You'll have to forgive me. I lose focus. I do that. But yeah, I created a lot of adversity for myself. And I've learned a lot of things over the years that has helped change me. And that's my purpose here with these videos. That's why I'm making this. That's why I'm reaching out, is to share some of the content of some of the things that I learned. So that maybe, you won't have to do so much digging or research for yourself. I've invested thousands of hours in reading and studying different subjects, and it's given me a very unique perspective on life, and it's helped me have a lot of profound realizations that I look forward to in the future, in the days coming, weeks, months, sharing these ideas and these realizations with you. And I'm sure as time goes on, I will share different stories about my past with you, and I'll go into a little more detail on some things. For now, this is about all I feel comfortable sharing. The past isn't, it's no longer. The past is but a memory. The past only exists in our mind. The only moment that matters, the only speck of time that matters is right now, this moment. Not the future, not yesterday, but this moment, and how you came to be here. It's one of the biggest things I've learned in the last 10 years, is that there's nothing more important than this exact moment in time. This can be the moment that changes everything for you. This can be the moment that you decide to do something differently and you take a more productive path in your life and you rebuild yourself and you learn something new. The moment that you're in right now, this very second, it's the only moment you're ever going to have. And we keep stepping on and stepping forward, if we're lucky, to the next moment, into the next one, and into the next one. But there's nothing more important than the moment that you're in. So, sorry if this seemed like just a bunch of ranting or rambling about myself. Like I said, I wanted to make a video, put it out there, give you a little bit of my backstory. I hope you gained some benefit out of this. Like I said, I feel like I've just spent about the last 20 minutes rambling on. But if any of my rantings, if any second of my rantings can serve anyone or help anyone, it was all worth it. So if you have liked this video or you've taken something away from it, please hit the like button below and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be making another video tomorrow on belief systems, how the mind works in conjunction with those belief systems, and how our beliefs, it's all about beliefs, how beliefs shape our reality. So until next time, friends, I hope everything in your life is going beautifully, that you're prosperous, and you have much love around you. Thank you.